August 8, 1945. In Moscow, the lights in the Foreign Ministry are still burning long after midnight. At exactly 11 o'clock, Soviet Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov summons the Japanese ambassador. He hands him a single sheet of paper. It is a declaration of war. 3 days earlier, the world saw the first atomic bomb fall on Hiroshima. The United States is waiting for Japan's answer. But Stalin has been waiting too, watching, calculating, and now moving. Within hours, 1.6 million Soviet troops will begin their march east across Manchuria. To Japan, it's the nightmare scenario. The empire they thought was neutral has joined the war, just as the war is almost over. By August 1945, Japan is a nation on the brink. Its navy shattered, its cities burned, its people starving. For months, American bombers have turned night into fire across Tokyo, Osaka, and Nagoya. Then came Hiroshima, a single bomb, an entire city erased. Inside the Imperial Palace, the Supreme War Council is divided. Some generals still speak of honor and final defense. Others whisper the unthinkable: surrender. But there's a problem. Surrender to whom? The Allies demand unconditional surrender, and that to Tokyo sounds like national suicide. So Japanese diplomats have been working a quiet channel through Moscow. The hope is the Soviet Union, still neutral thanks to the 1941 Neutrality Pact, might broker a peace deal, one that would let Japan keep the emperor and avoid invasion. For weeks, messages crossed Siberia begging for mediation. No one in Tokyo knows that Stalin has already promised the Allies something very different. Back in February 1945 at the Yalta Conference, Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin cut a deal. Once Germany was defeated, the Soviet Union would enter the war against Japan within 3 months. Germany surrendered on May 9th. 3 months later, almost to the day, comes August 8th. Stalin has kept his timetable to the hour. The Neutrality Pact with Japan is still technically in force, but that's a detail of paperwork. For Stalin, timing is everything. If he enters too early, he risks being dragged into a long Pacific campaign. Too late, and the Americans might finish the job alone and shape all of post-war Asia without him. So he waits. He rebuilds his Far Eastern armies with equipment and veterans fresh from Berlin, masses them in Siberia, and prepares a blow Japan can't stop and can't anticipate. When the Hiroshima bomb drops on August 6th, Stalin realizes the window is closing fast. If the atomic bomb ends the war before Soviet troops fire a shot, Moscow gains nothing. So on August 8th, he moves. At 11 that night, Molotov hands over the declaration. It ends 4 years of neutrality and opens one of the most decisive 48-hour offensives in military history. In Moscow, the clock strikes 11. Japan's ambassador, Naotake Sato, is ushered into Molotov's office. He already senses what's coming. His cables to Tokyo have warned that Soviet politeness had turned to silence. Molotov's words are formal, cold, and final. The Soviet government declares that as of tomorrow, August 9th, the Soviet Union will consider itself in a state of war with Japan. Sato can't respond. He bows, accepts the document, and leaves in silence. Hours later, shortwave stations in Siberia come alive. Orders are read out to 3 massive fronts stretching from Mongolia to Vladivostok. After years of neutrality, the Red Army is going east. Back in Tokyo, the declaration lands at dawn, almost the same hour the Americans dropped their second atomic bomb on Nagasaki. To the Japanese cabinet, it feels like the world has collapsed from 2 directions at once. Just after midnight, thunder rolls across Manchuria. Not weather, but artillery. The Soviet 1.6 million man invasion has begun. Operation August Storm. In the north, mechanized columns under Marshal Vasilevsky smash into the Japanese Kwantung Army, a force once feared but now hollow, short on tanks, short on ammunition, built for occupation, not defense. In the west, troops from Mongolia cross the deserts of the Gobi, racing through dust storms. In the east, Soviet Marines land on the coast and push toward the ports of Korea. The attack is everything Japan had feared: massive, coordinated, and mercilessly fast. Soviet tank units advance hundreds of kilometers in days, paratroopers drop on key airfields, and the Kwantung Army collapses almost instantly. To the Soviets, it's revenge for 1905, the defeat at Tsushima finally repaid. To the Allies, it's proof that Stalin kept his word. And to Japan, it's the final confirmation that there is no one left to turn to. At dawn in Tokyo, news of the Soviet declaration hits the imperial palace like a hammer blow. For weeks, Foreign Minister Togo Shigenori had begged Stalin through back channels for mediation. Now those pleas look pitiful. The supposed peace broker has declared war. Emperor Hirohito calls an emergency meeting of the Supreme War Council. The generals are stunned, some still insisting Japan can fight on, but the diplomats know the truth. With the Soviets attacking from the north and the Americans from the south, there is no escape, no neutral ground, no time. A diary entry from one aide reads simply, "The last door to peace has closed." Within 24 hours, the emperor begins pushing for surrender, and for the first time since the war began, his voice, not the generals, will decide Japan's fate. The Soviet offensive tears through Manchuria. Within days, entire Japanese divisions surrender. Rail hubs fall in hours. Columns that once took months to move are surrounded in a day. The Kwantung Army, once Japan's proud imperial garrison, barely fights back. Its officers are veterans of conquest, not defense. Their tanks are relics, their lines thin. Some units flee east toward Korea, others vanish into the mountains. By mid-August, Soviet troops have reached Harbin and the borders of Korea. In a single week, Japan loses the empire it built on the Asian mainland, Manchuria, southern Sakhalin, and the Kuril Islands, all slipping from its grasp. A Soviet general later wrote, "It was less a battle than a chase." Militarily, the invasion is a triumph. Politically, it's too late. By the time Stalin's armies cross into Manchuria, Hiroshima has already been erased. 2 days later, Nagasaki joins it. Inside Japan's war cabinet, the atomic bomb and the Soviet invasion arrive almost together. A 1-2 blow that ends debate. For Stalin, the goal was to secure territory and influence before Japan surrendered. For the Allies, it looked like Moscow arriving after the fight was decided. Even American officials privately joked the Soviets had joined the war just in time for the peace. Still, the impact is real. It erases Japan's hope of mediation, removes the fantasy of negotiating through Moscow, and gives the emperor the leverage he needs to overrule the military hardliners. On August 15th, Hirohito records his surrender broadcast. When he speaks of a new and most cruel bomb, the world listens. But in Tokyo's inner circle, everyone knows the other reason. The Red Army now stands on Asia's doorstep. If the Soviets entered too late to shape the surrender, they entered just in time to shape the peace. At Yalta, Stalin had been promised spoils for joining the Pacific War, the southern half of Sakhalin, the Kuril Islands, and influence in northern Korea. Now, with the Red Army already there, those promises become fact. In Korea, Soviet troops stop at the 38th parallel, the line agreed with the Americans and the line that will one day split the peninsula in two. In China, captured Japanese equipment and officers are handed over to Mao's communists, helping tip the Chinese Civil War. So yes, the Soviets declared war too late to fight Japan's main battle, but right on time to carve their place in the next one, the Cold War. It's tempting to ask, what if Stalin had waited another week? If the Soviets had stayed out, Japan still would have faced the unbearable. 2 atomic bombs, blockade, starvation. Surrender was inevitable. But without Soviet entry, the map of Asia would have looked very different. No Red Army in Manchuria, no Soviet occupation in northern Korea, no captured Japanese equipment handed to Mao's forces in China. The war would have ended the same, but the peace would not. Stalin didn't join the fight to defeat Japan. He joined it to shape what came after Japan fell, and in that goal he succeeded completely.